are appointed. Now, it says the 3 commissioners, one of whom is to be a retired judge, the other a member of civil society, and a person nominated by the minister. Now, all three are appointed by the minister in relation not to broad judicial matters from family law back to company law, criminal law. This is a specific activity pertaining to the single activity of phone tapping. Phone tapping, and that phone tapping may extend to every one of the 30 of us who have the privilege and the honor to come in here and describe ourselves as honorable members. We are not above it. We are not above the scrutiny and the surveillance of a system of phone tapping if it is felt that we may be involved in any of the offenses mentioned at Schedule 1, including corruption. Why then must someone under this act referred to as a minister be given the power and the authority to choose those 3 persons? Is that not control? Is that not control? And the control deepens itself when it says that the minister shall determine how much they're paid. That is control. That is control. And we have argued previously, and we will continue to argue, that the president of this Republican state is given the power to appoint 7 senators. Why can't the president be given equal power to appoint 3 members of a commission as serious as this? A commission that goes to the very heart of the democracy that we have known. And I said earlier this year, show me a democracy and I'll show you a tyranny in the making. This is tyranny in the making, Your Honor. This is tyranny in the making, when something as sacred as a telephone call cannot be made with privacy. And that this legislation says that for the period of 120 days, 2 gentlemen or 2 ladies, whoever they are, I don't care who they are, don't care about the gender, that 2 persons shall be given the power to conduct that exercise of surveillance and scrutiny over 120 consecutive days. And a body of 3 persons will supervise them. And that body is appointed by a minister. A minister. And I'm going to say something now that we all must know. Who is the minister? I will let the public guess. I will let the public guess as to the minister or the personage that this legislation allows to be concealed behind the nomenclature minister. We all can guess who it would be within this system that is being established. The point I make, Your Honor, is that this system of phone tapping exists ultimately under the control and the influence of a politician, called in this act a minister. And the public can guess as to which minister it is. I've not come here for personal assault on anyone. I have come to attack a system that infringes against freedom, personal freedom in this country. That is what we must resist. That is what decent people in Barbados must resist. And people in Barbados must extricate themselves out of those cocoons of fear, because it is fear that makes us run to WhatsApp and the other systems of encryption until we discover that encryption can be decoded. The technology that created encryption is now subject to a superior technology that can decode that encryption. So all of us who live within those cocoons of comfort are now cast into the cocoons, back into the other cocoon of fear, where people in this country are justified, perhaps, in their reluctance to express even a political opinion in the privacy of a telephone call. People are whispering. People are avoiding conversations. People are saying, I will say it to you only if I see you. And if I don't see you, I can't say it. That is the country in which we are now existing. How did we get to this point? How did we reach this point of fear? This legislation gives justification to that fear. And you would have thought that a government would have come to this parliament today with legislation to erase that fear and to genuinely target a criminal element by this legislation. Just as we felt that the government would have come here and passed a new bail act that would have prevented recidivistic, murderous acts in this country, and it has failed to do it. Just as we had hoped that a government would not bring a cybercrime bill to criminalize and to impose massive financial fines on people simply for making a meme. And just as we were hoping over the last 3-4 months that government would not carry out a threat to penalize people for having dark windows, privacy again, just as we had those hopes have been defeated today by a government that is insistent and persistent and that continues to show us the road to dictatorship. And if no one in this country believes that we are on the road to dictatorship, read this legislation. Anyone can take offense, political or personal offense, it matters not to me. I read English. And I live in this country. And I know the kinds of conversations I have with people every day. That people are asking for an extrication from an environment which is oppressive. We are not doing well in this country, sir. We are not doing well in this country. And I'm not restricting my argument to our material well-being. There's a spiritual darkness. People feel defeated. People feel a lack of freedom. People feel that there's a need to breathe anew and to breathe afresh. And when we hope that we can breathe anew and breathe afresh, along comes legislation like this. We were so happy when the cybercrime bill was put on the shelf. We were really happy. And apart from being happy, we were hopeful that the think legislation would not come, and up to yesterday the threats are made that they're coming, and that they're coming on September 1st. This one. This is the most dangerous of the three. And so I say to the learned Attorney General, it is not about quantities of legislation. It is about the quality of governmental conduct. The governmental conduct that shows that power must be reserved to this government in this country. And people wonder why I say what I will say now. Governmental discomfort reveals itself in a political environment and a political atmosphere in which you get a sense that government never really settles into office. And I can say to you, sir, that the dominant conversation in this country over the last 3 years, 3.5 now, has not been on developmental issues. It has been on when government will call the next election. That we have found ourselves as a country in a frame of mind in which we wake every day and people are asking, when will the government call the election? Because the people in this country believe that the government is more concerned with an election than it is with the country's welfare. And we live in a system in which the people of this country give the government 5 years. 5 years. And after 3, there's this restlessness, this discomfort, this governmental restlessness. Is it a government that is insecure? Is it a government that is never comfortable with its mandate? Is it a government that feels that it cannot govern and find public acceptance unless there's always that threat of an election looming over people's heads and making them restless and uncomfortable? It's not a good country to live in when there's that level of restlessness. And if the restlessness was never justified, today that restlessness is justified by the presence of this legislation in our lives. And I would hope, Your Honor, that just as the cybercrime bill seems to have disappeared, that this legislation must disappear. And I'm going to ask the people of Barbados to let their voices be heard in resistance to this. Because this is not about the few political parties we have around here. This is about every citizen who owns a cell phone. This is about every citizen who owns a landline telephone. And they number more, and more significantly, than any political party in this country. But I believe, Your Honor, that government in its quest to control every area of individual expression may now be, in a very practical way, afraid of who are those persons who oppose the government, whether they do it by way of artistic expression. There are people who create videos, and I think you call them memes. These little videos, which in some countries have won elections, and just maybe this government has no intention to lose an election through social media. And this legislation will become a chance for the government to suppress freedom of expression in private spaces. WhatsApp. If a man or a woman has the power to send out 100 WhatsApp messages, 100 memes, and those 100 people can send to 100 people, that is power. That is political power. And is that the political power of which a government is afraid? And is that the political power that a government intends to snuff out by tapping people's phones and identifying them? And we all know, and the people of this country know, that this government is a government of transactions. And that there are people who express favor, and in exchange, they receive favor. And that is who many of us have become. That political thought and the integrity of political thought now suffers at the anvil of the transaction, the benefit. You can curse a government one day and praise them the next, and it does not disqualify you from receiving a favor. That's happening in Barbados, in broad daylight. And so the cause, the political cause, the philosophical moorings, the political thought in Barbados is not at risk of death because the transaction has become people's mode of survival. It's a vulgar political world. And causes are dying. Causes are dying, sir. And if a cause is alive and it refuses to die, you can kill it with this legislation. You can say to that person, I defy you and I deny you the right to express a political opinion because I'm going to hear you, and hearing you, I will punish you. That is what this legislation is capable of doing. Show me a democracy and I will show you a tyranny in the making. Here is the tyranny revealing itself. Here is a politician having control over surveillance. Here's a politician having control over phone tapping in this country by setting up a commission and calling it an independent commission when the evidence and the structural evidence makes it clear that there's nothing independent about it. And when you have the power to appoint them, you also, by this legislation, reserve unto yourself the right to give them the amount of money that you want to give them as their remuneration. That is control. You're dealing with human beings. And there was a case in which a judge said, men are not angels, and he included women. They're not angels. There's no perfection. But we wish for perfection in our military services. We wish for perfection at the very highest levels of government and governance. And that is why we repose trust and confidence in our high officials. But there are times when our high officials must not make themselves immune from the gaze, from the scrutiny of our military services. And there's only one person in this country. And let me drop the word person and say office. There's only one political office in this country that may be found acceptable in terms of appointment, since the office of president does not engage itself actively except in very, very few cases. But certainly in terms of the appointment of a body, a monitoring and a supervisory body as important as this, the people of this country must now receive the best legal advice that no one except the office of president must appoint this independent monitoring commission. And if it is not given to the office of president, it loses its right to call itself independent. And monies that are voted for this commission under this legislation are voted by this parliament. I say that ought to be amended. And the monies for this commission and for this system ought to be voted within the monies that are voted by this parliament for the police service, and not separately for this system. Again, evidence of parliamentary and political control. Who are we? We're just a parliament of 30 people. 30 fallible human beings. 30 people who must not ask the public to see us or any of us as above a system of scrutinizing telephone calls. It should not happen, but when it has to happen, no member of this parliament and no member of the other place must be seen or must be placed above the system by being given the power to appoint. And we know that in these arrangements, the person who appoints hardly ever loses the right of access to the person whom he appoints. Hardly ever. Hardly ever. Who are these super people? Who is this super minister under this legislation who gives unto himself or herself the right to be involved in the appointment of a 3-person monitoring commission? And this is not about garbage collection or street lighting. This is about invading against a constitutional right to privacy. That is what this is about. This is about the possibility that a man or a woman may sacrifice an entire professional career because of an opinion that he gives. Because people have lost the right to elevation, professional elevation in this country and in many countries because of a political opinion. Show me a democracy and I'll show you a tyranny in the making. This is the evidence today, sir. And this is the evidence of a government that intends to turn the vice grip in suppression of political freedoms in this country. This is evidence of that. No freedom-loving Barbadian can conscientiously today stand and give support to this legislation. It is dangerous, it is sinister, it is sinful, it is immoral. And Barbadians are encouraged to resist it, not by violence, but by righteous thought. And this government must be asked to return with this from whence it came. And in my view, it comes out of the bowels of tyrannical intent, a belief that you must hold a country in the palm of your hand and give dictate indefinitely. And while you intend to give dictate indefinitely, the people of this country say, give us our freedom. Give us our freedom, and we will only have that freedom if this legislation is reversed. The people of this country reverse cybercrime. The people of this country would love to reverse tint. Will this legislation be reversed? Will this legislation be reversed, sir? And if it is not, the very constitution that this legislation infringes today will become subject to even greater infringements. Today, this legislation, this government acknowledges and admits that it infringes against the right to privacy. This government admits that. When will they infringe the right to freedom of association? When will they reverse the right or infringe the right to freedom of expression, political opinion? These are all sacred rights, sir. This legislation today is capable of infringing against all those rights, because those rights, Your Honor, begin with thought. And when thought transfigures itself into speech, and the speaker is identified as being a potential enemy of the government, a government may decide, you being our enemy must not survive. And that is the reality in a lot of countries. That is the reality in many countries, sir. That many people are imprisoned for their beliefs. Many people are imprisoned for their opinions. Many people are imprisoned for their speech, for their spoken and written speech. That is where we are today. We are on the threshold of that tyranny. We are on the threshold of that dictatorship. Can we and will we as a country take this specter? That is how I describe this legislation. This specter of tyranny. Can we take it seriously? Or will we say, well, it is the government, and the government has the numbers, and the government has the power. And what will we do? Will we endure it? Or will we have the will? Will we have the political will? Will we have the political might to resist this? This is worthy, Your Honor, of resistance. I ask the people of this country to study this legislation, to take it seriously, to consider it for what it is worth, and it is worth nothing except a threat against all of their rights. And to consider that there is no invasion more sinister than an invasion against privacy. We understand that people will get hungry and invade the stores, the supermarkets, and steal. But that is theft of a material product. This represents theft and deprivation of the right to think and the right to turn those thoughts into conversation, and the right of a government to say, if you converse in that way, chances are you'll act in a way that we do not like, and that we will ensure that you will not survive politically. And it can become more dangerous. There are countries in which the government, an autocratic government, an authoritarian government, a despotic or dictatorial government will say, you will not have the right to exist at all. And sometimes they imprison, and sometimes they kill. Is that the road on which we are, sir? We've never seen it before. But the fact that we've never seen it before, Your Honor, does that indicate that we will never see it in this country? We've never seen the kind of crime in this country that we are seeing now. From where did it come? Barbadians are committing that crime. Never used to happen before, but it is happening now. And if that quality of crime can happen now in this country, are we going to have a government that is capable of doing what this legislation portends? And this legislation does not portend well for the people of this country. This is called a cognate debate, and I have no intention of allowing this sinister and dangerous legislation to be hidden away among legislation dealing with jurors and special constables. But a word for the special constables, sir. I have previously been petitioned by special constables for their induction fully into the police service. And today, I am pleased